Our last introspectionist psychology, act psychology, has as its central practitioner Franz Brentano. Brentano was remembered in the history of psychology not for his ability to generate accurate and predictive dynamical models or attributional models, nor for his methodological acumen or his experimental designs. Brentano was remembered primarily for his reintroduction of intentionality into thinking about the nature of mental functioning. In his major work, Psychology from an Empirical Standpoint, Brentano coins the term intentionality to characterize his view that every mental act, for example, the act of seeing Calvin the dog, has an object to which it refers. This and this alone is really the central reason why Brentano is remembered in the literature. Brentano's focus is exclusively on higher-order mental processes. In fact, he holds that psychology should study mental processes in order to determine their function. The methodology Brentano advocates for exploring these higher-order mental processes is phenomenological introspection, which asks subjects to analyze temporally extended processes such as inferences. Brentano doesn't publish very much, but he nevertheless influences many people, including Freud. Our reflections on introspectionist psychology reveals a series of related paradigms that all revolve around a paradigmatic use of introspection in physiology and psychophysiology. There is an attempt to define a domain around that successful application of introspection. And the hope is that by rigorous categorizations that are tied to the domain with this introspective operationalization, that quantitative and qualitative categorizations and dynamical models can evolve that will help to organize, explain, and predict that phenomenon. Introspectionist psychologists contribute both positively and negatively to the experimental tradition. Many of them design experimental devices to facilitate their studies. They found psychology labs, and they use and extend the use of reaction time in psychology. Their central weakness and the cause ultimately of their downfall as a psychological school is their overuse and their misuse of introspection. Specifically, their heavy reliance on introspection as the sole means of operationalization of an extensive network of categorizations. Their extensive training of subjects in formulating introspective reports, while rendered necessary to some degree by their extensive and unnatural categorizations, nevertheless introduces implicit biases into experimental results. Subjects tell you what you want to hear precisely because that is what you train them to do. Moreover, by allowing for extended and retroactive introspective reports, as particularly Titchener and Brentano do, introspective analyses introduce a much greater potential for error and biases on the part of both the subject and the experimenter. In addition to this, they have a certain naivete in their view about the ability of introspection to operationalize the categories of their theories. And they exhibit a near complete failure to calibrate or cross-validate the reliability of their introspective processes for the purposes of operationalizing their categories. And as a result, there's very little replication of experiments across individual labs within introspection. Introspectionists contribute to some extent to data accumulation. They discover certain effects. They produce these elaborate categorizations, but they produce very few dynamic models, and their data doesn't hold up over time for the most part. In the next lecture module, we'll turn our attention to a different couple of schools, functionalism and Gestalt psychology.